Joining us in the studio today on Valentine's Day is an autism inclusion advocate, a self-proclaimed history geek, very much known for her videos on genealogy. Please welcome Mona Magno-Veluz, popularly called Mighty Magulang. Hello, welcome to Morning Matters.
Good morning, Gretchen, and good morning to everyone.
A very interesting hobby you have on TikTok. I mean, these are long videos, you tracing the histories and the relatives of very popular families in the Philippines. I mean, how did you get to this?
I actually started with our own family. I started in the year 2000, doing our family tree, and then it snowballed from there. I was successful. I got to do it for other families, and during the pandemic, I got bored and I started doing it on TikTok.
Now, we wanted to have you here because we do know that families have been on the headlines lately, particularly political families. And now more than ever, political dynasties are being talked about. It seems to be a recurrent theme in Philippine politics. I wanted to find out the patterns that you've been seeing, studying all of these popular families. Actually, sinabi nga ni Ben Tulfo nung isang araw na hindi raw sila political dynasty dahil wala silang baluarte. I mean, what is your definition of a political dynasty?
But I'd like to preface this by saying I feel that public service is something that is grown in the home. It is something that families kind of gravitate to because their ancestors or their parents were also public servants. Back to the question of what is a political dynasty. In the law, actually wala pa tayong law, but there have been drafts of anti-political dynasty laws. And those laws define dynasties as relatives, I think up to the fourth consanguinity, so 4 steps away for an apo and a lolo, for a pinsan. All of those are within a political dynasty inclusion criteria. Pero ang nagde-define po, hindi yung baluarte, but when they serve together to a point that it can create conflict of interest, it can prolong the family's hold on to power, and it can influence the normal course of government.
Pero kasi usually, tama nga po kayo, it is grown in the home, interest in public service, in politics. Nai-imbibe yun dahil kung nakakwento ni tatay, nakakwento ni tito. Sa inyong pag-aaral, ano yung unang pinakamatagal na political dynasty o pinakamalaki na political dynasty dito?
Marami
Anong
sila
unang home yan?
Alam mo, ang dami. Like, even from the time the Spanish started creating encomiendas and we started having cabeza de barangay or gobernadorcillo, meron na po tayong mga political families that can connect up to that point. Napakarami nila. And I was telling you earlier, I wanted to do a series on political dynasties last year. And na-depress po ako.
Bakit?
Dahil ang dami masyado. They're about, in my, in what I've read, like 200 of them are called political dynasties today. About half of them can connect their roots up to the first Philippine Assembly. Ganun po kalala. And when you parallel that with all of the academic studies on the effect of political dynasties, lahat po sinasabi sa atin na it is bad for politics, it is bad for the economy, it is bad for those parasocial relationships that the electorate develop with the candidates. So it's bad on so many levels, pero we're still there. Andun pa rin tayo. And then we complain kung bakit hindi nag-iiba ang sistema ng gobyerno. But we still gravitate to the familiar surnames.
Do you think what we're seeing here in the Philippines is unique to us, or is it also very much around the world, in the democracies around the world? Or sa atin yan dahil sa ating history na sinakop tayo ng Espanya at nanggaling doon, close-knit ang family. Also, the other side of it is you need resources, you need connections to win, you need people around you to win, yung winnability ng kandidato. Sa inyong pag-aaral, I mean, is it because our democratic institutions are weaker than others, or nakikita mo rin sa ibang bansa yun?
I think we are, in our constitution, we do have an anti-dynasty provision. But it is against the interests of those who are going to draft the law to actually pass it. So from 1986 up to now, wala pa rin tayong anti-dynasty law. And if you compare ourselves with, for example, Indonesia, I think parallel lang. Parang pareho lang. But in other countries, European countries and in the US, what I am seeing more of are political legacies. So I want to differentiate that with a political dynasty. Kasi in the case of political legacies, meron silang ancestor, magulang, kapatid, or whoever, na nag-serve din. Pero hindi sila sabay. Hindi nagkaroon ng conflict of interest.
Okay.
Hindi nagkaroon ng possible collusion para mag-influence ng nangyayari at that time.
It will be difficult to define, no? Up to which, I think, consanguinity pwedeng tumakbo at kung kailan at yun na nga, no? I guess siguro dun sa ibang, yung political legacy, kumbaga parang, sige siya muna, tapos pagka ako na.
Or si
diba?
Lolo. Like
Okay.
a good example is Chel Diokno. Chel Diokno is a political legacy. Yung tatay niya, yung lolo niya, yung tatay ng lolo niya, lahat sila nagsilbi sa gobyerno at some point.
Pero
or
hindi
other.
sila sabay-sabay.
Never sila nagsabay.
So, would you classify the Tulfos now as an emerging political dynasty?
Oh yes, definitely.
Okay, I want to go into the different prominent political families. Puntahan natin yan yung pag-trace ng kanilang genealogy. The Tulfos, what do we know of them?
Well, it's actually very interesting. Maganda yung story ng lolo nila at ng papa nila. Their lolo, for example, Ramon Tulfo, was a soldier who re-upped to fight the war, World War II. He died in Capas. He did the death march together with his son. Tapos pagdating nun, he died there. The son ended up, after the war, looking for Japanese collaborators and Japanese spies, which brought him to Davao. In Davao, he started interviewing the local community, which was where he met his future wife. The wife is of Japanese descent, and they got together because of that. And
Pero sundalo talagang pinanggalingan ng Tulfo family.
Yes.
Walang nanilbihan o naging opisyalis ng gobyerno.
Wala.
Nung
So
unang
sila
panahon.
yung generation nila yung una. Pero ang difference lang nun, kasi ngayon, for example, we have Senator Raffy, and kung swertihin, si Ben at saka si Erwin will also serve. Which means 3 out of the, how many? 12? Is it 12? Or 12 posts in the Senate would be theirs.
24.
Sorry, 24. So, the 24, 3
Pero
out of the 24.
meron din tayong mga Tulfo sa Kongreso.
Correct. So, meron pa sa Congress, posibleng 7. Imagine the political strength of that. Dahil ang nangyayari po sa gobyerno, hindi lang naman basta batas-batas yan. They say yes to certain treaties or like for example, the visiting defense, yung mga ganyan, sila mag-a-approve niyan. Yung mga lisensya para sa mga negosyo, sila din ang mag-a-approve niyan. So,
Okay, punta naman natin yung isa pang interesting video mo, no? That the Dutertes, the Marcoses, and the Romualdeses could be related. Oh, what did you find there?
they are actually related by marriage, distantly related by marriage. The half-brother of Imelda Marcos, Vicente Acereda Romualdez, has a wife whose last name is Veloso. And Veloso is a relative of the Dutertes. She is the third cousin of Rodrigo Duterte. So they are, by marriage, distantly related.
Malayo.
Malayo.
Sa mga nakikita nyo ba, talagang there's the high possibility that many of the political families are related to each other, maybe in marriage or...
Definitely. In fact, there is another genealogist and researcher, Todd Lucero, who's actually done a map of all of the Philippine presidents. And you can fit them on one page. they are related either by blood or by marriage.
So mahirap din talaga, ano? I mean, to break out of that cycle, if most of our leaders are, operating in that environment na magkakaano. Sila rin ang nakikita kasi,
exactly.
Diba?
And it is closely related to business. Kasi to be a politician requires money, and that suits their purpose. That if you are close to the seats of power and the seats of, financial power.
I want to talk about two other families that have been very, very. I think they have shaped Philippine history in magnificent ways, and that is yung Aquinos at yung Marcoses. You said that Chris Aquino and the First Lady are related.
Yes.
How so? Could you explain that family tree to us?
Right. It's actually quite simple because the maternal uncle of Chris Aquino, Pedro, married the maternal aunt of Lisa. So they are pinsans
Second
in
cousin,
that way.
third
No,
cousin.
they're related by
Cousin.
marriage because the tito of Chris and the tita of Lisa got married.
So magkakaibigan ba yung
I'm sure nakikita-kita sila sa family reunion. Diba? You have to be friendly sa family reunion. Tita, beso-beso.
Siyempre, Araneta kasi si First Lady.
Yes.
Liza Araneta.
Yes. But
She
it's the
married.
Cacho side. So the tita who married the Kumuangko is a Cacho.
Okay. How about the Villars?
Okay. The Villars are actually, I would say, second. No, not the Villars, but the Aguilars. Si Manny Villar was the first of his family to be a national politician. Cynthia, however, is second generation. Kumbaga yung father niya was also a politician. And Cynthia's siblings are also into politics. So tapos they all came together in Las Piñas, at least for the Aguilars. And for a national level, of course, we know that many of Manny Villar's children and also in-laws are in politics.
I remember you also saying in a video that the Dutertes, contrary to popular belief, they're not actually outsiders of the political realm.
Yeah, that's right. In fact, the father of Rodrigo Duterte came from a long line of politicians in Cebu and Danao and all of that. And they married into other political families and political dynasties. So they are connected to so many areas within Visayas and Mindanao.
How did you trace all of this? I mean, it must be really difficult work.
Well, we are very lucky because we have the Freedom of Information Law, where historical documents are something that we can access if we know where to look. So there are online resources like Family Search, Ancestry.com. There are crowdsourced websites like Genie.com. But of course, nothing beats the good old research, going to the library, going to the National Archives, and looking for...
And you do that yourself?
Oh, yes. I do.
How many hours do you spend?
It depends. It depends on the profile. There are some cities, there are some towns that have that we can find really old documents easily. But there are some, for example, Iloilo, where my father is from. As in, it was bombed during the war. So that's why my family tree is very heavy on my mother's side and then lopsided because of the absence of information on my dad's side. So depende yan.
Okay, so mamaya we'll talk about how to find your own genealogy and probably some love matters as it is Valentine's Day and you're my date for this morning. Welcome back. You're still here on Morning Matters. We're still joined by Mona Magno-Veluz, popularly known as Mighty Magulang. Right, we talked about genealogy and we talked about rummaging through records. Which records do you rely on to be able to trace all of these family maps?
Okay, so when you do genealogy, you want to look for primary records. Primary records are records created during that time period. So birth records, civil records, the baptismal record. Baptismal records in the Philippines are interesting because usually it also includes your parents' names and your grandparents' names. It means that you have to learn a little bit of Spanish, but otherwise it's fun. We also use marriage records and death records. And kung hindi ka makahanap ng ganong records, you go for secondary sources, which would be newspapers, which would be books. So that is something that I use. Some families have like family books, which would document the myths in their
But how do you
families.
get access to that? I mean, from where you are, it must take a lot of resources and a lot of connections to get to those books.
I've been doing this for 20 years. So there is already a familiarity with where the repositories are.
Pero kayo ay nakakakuha rin ng record mula sa China.
It's possible, yes. I don't do it directly.
Because of course I know, I'm not gonna deny it. I'm Filipino Chinese,
Yeah.
and I have my roots there. Is it possible for you to trace where I come from?
Yes, because I can find a genealogist who can look for your family book or your clan book in China if it hasn't been destroyed.
So, pero isa pang problema doon sa nakikita ko, kasi pag minsan may mga kulang, di ba? Like for example, hindi naman sila kinasal, pero may relationship. Paano mo nakakahanap yung ganong?
You know, there was this news article last year. It was Todd Lucero also who successfully helped the family trace the father of Sergio Osmeña. That was a big question mark, a historical question mark for many years, and it was DNA that solved that mystery. And Todd facilitated that.
So you could also access that.
Well, if there is a specific, if you want to establish parentage, that's the way to go. DNA allows us to look for other family members. There are several providers out there where you could swab and then send it to a repository, and then they figure out who you could be related to. But that means that person also want to look for their relatives, and they've also swabbed.
In studying the political families in the Philippines, is there any surprising pattern that you saw? I mean, in terms of being prominent, being able to win in an election, meron pang parang common themes or patterns?
What I know and what we can see is that a lot of people would, if they have a prominent ancestor or family member, they would play on that. So, for example, when Grace Poe ran for president, she would have like a ghost of FPJ in the background of her poster. So they leverage off the good name of their ancestors if it's there.
But you also talked about family myths.
Yes.
How much have they helped you find the ancestries of these families?
I really don't work on myth. When they share it with me, I take it with a grain of salt. And in a lot of cases, when you try to look for documents that support those myths, oftentimes it's not there. So a lot of us claim that we descend from Spanish people, but the documents don't support it. Our president has long claimed that they descend from Limahong, for example, and the documents will be able to support that.
We mean,
There's no documentation. Limahong was a pirate, so he wouldn't register himself if ever he has a child, diba? So it's one of those things that you won't be able to test unless you can find an ancestor or a fellow descendant of Limahong, like from China, and you can compare your DNA.
is there anybody in your studies that has stood out amongst all of these powerful families that was able to break through?
The example that I said earlier about Sergio Osmeña, that's one major breakthrough when it comes to research. But for everyone else, I think, for me, exciting yung when I find a connection to the royal family. I find a connection to an American founding father, but are Filipino. And there are some.
From from here.
Yes, private individuals who have a direct line to
What
a
should
US
we
government.
understand in terms of our relationship with other countries like Spain, who we've had a history with, Japan, also America? I mean, what should we understand about how much we've been influenced?
When it comes to genealogy, I think one of the saddest things is that there is this perception that there is somebody 100% Filipino. Nationality has nothing to do with your ancestry. We are Filipinos, we love our country, but in our blood, it can carry Spanish, it can carry Japanese, it can carry Chinese. So our ancestry has nothing to do with our love for country.
And on Valentine's Day, is there anything you've found out
Well,
when it comes to love and finding love?
I guess in connection then with the politics and the theme of the day, there are families who have been fighting like for a long time. My example would be the Marcoses and the I'm sorry, what's his name? Marcos and I forget his last name now. But yeah, one of the apos of Marcos, Mike, married Cara, who is the apo of his political rival. And I think at the end of the day, even if you fight over politics, even if it's election season and fighting is the way to go, love can still conquer all.
So meron pa rin mga intermarriages.
Yes.
How difficult would it be for us to have a stronger democracy and to actually fight political dynasties? Do you think it's possible in our lifetime? Or, I mean, according to what you've studied, it really is part and parcel already of Philippine politics?
Actually, the tips that you have for somebody who has been sawi in love is also the same as the tips you would tell the electorate when they're voting. Like, if they put you, if they let you down already, huwag kang bumalik, di ba? You deserve someone better. So, go down that road.
Pwede ba akong magpa-trace ng aking history and roots? If our viewers are interested in doing that, how do we even start?
Well, it is a very engaged process. So personally, I only do institutional clients and I only work with foundations and companies. But there are a lot of genealogists that you can find online. They have Facebook pages and you can reach out to them and ask for a quote depending on your objectives.
And how do you think this could help us learning our own genealogy?
It's the individual who will tell you why they want to do this. For some, they want to know if they can apply for dual citizenship in Spain. There are some who just need to understand where they came from because it is something that is always, I think, at the back of our heads. Maybe we're too busy to think about it, but sometimes when you're retired na and you have nothing else to, jump into, genealogy is one thing people go for.
Actually, minsan iniisip ko nga ako kasi yung lolo ng dad ko ay galing sa Guangzhou, China. But my mom has roots in Filipino and Spanish roots. So sometimes I think about tracing those lineages to be able to understand where you come from, what influenced you, and I guess to complete your sense of identity.
Yeah, and I recommend that you DIY. When you do it yourself, it is cathartic. It actually helps you.
The first place that we should go to is
FamilySearch.org.
FamilySearch.org, and then right after that,
it will lead you to the right direction.
Okay. I hope we also have that for love, right?
Yeah.
Just go type into a website and it will lead you into the right direction. Thank you so much for joining us today and being my date on Valentine's Day to know more a little bit about the families that surround us, maybe political or those just around us, and how much they've influenced Philippine society, and how love plays a factor in the building of those families. We have Mona Magno-Veluz, popularly known as Mighty Magulang on Morning Matters on this Valentine's Day.